Hey, everybody, and welcome to the For Female Founders podcast series where we're helping women in business learn to thrive, not just survive. I am your host, Sarah Bundy, and today my guest is Molly Mahoney. And guess what? After creating a video that reached 1 million people organically, Molly developed her Go Live and Monetize method, which helps businesses to get clients with video. By staying ahead of trends like AI and chatbot, she stays on the cutting edge of what is coming next so her clients can make the most out of this rapidly changing space. Combining her social media expertise and 20 years of performance experience on stages from New York to Las Vegas, she even had a viral video hit and reach 39 million, which is amazing, Molly. Molly has been featured
Wild.
in a ton of different places, such as Inc. magazine, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and more. Molly, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be here with you. I've had so much fun with you already. I'm just like, I was telling my team today that you're just so awesome. So
Thank
I'm
you,
really
Molly. I
looking
love you
forward
to
to it.
pieces. Yay! Well, we're going to have some fun today. Today, we're actually going to talk about how to become an amazing public speaker because you've spent your career and much of your career performing up on stages, doing videos, doing podcasts. And, if you think about the entrepreneurial world and leaders, CEOs, founders, they have a big job to do. They have to speak in front of people frequently, whether it's their own team or up on stage so that they can spread the good news of whatever it is that is their business and expertise. So we want to learn from you today, Molly. Yay! Teach us all the
Hooray!
things.
I'm so excited to talk about this topic specifically as well, because I find that a lot of people look at my background as a professional performer and they're like, oh, well, of course this works well for you because you have this background as a theater performer. But there's actually so much that I had to let go of from that world of quote unquote performing. So I think those of you that are listening, you have exactly what you need in order to do this as well.
Great. Well, that's encouraging. And I'm sure people have got their papers and pens out or their thumbs ready to go on their phones so that they can take some notes. Before we jump in, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into performance and how you got into coaching people on how to be better performers?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was a professional musical theater performer to begin with, and I was on tour with Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which is very timely, even though it seems so silly. I don't know if you heard that Richard Sherman just recently passed away. So he was one of the Sherman brothers who wrote literally like all of our childhood.
Wow.
And I was able to meet him on the tour. It was such a great, awesome experience. And it was really fun. While I was on tour, my bass playing husband and I decided we didn't want to live this crazy life on the road anymore. And we moved back to California from New York, where I grew up. And that's when I launched my company and started teaching singing lessons and teaching other performers to have a career like I did. Then in 2016, when Facebook Live came out, I made this really big shift. And rather than teaching performers how to have a business, I started teaching business owners how to perform.
Love it.
It was such a good move.
Woo.
And sometimes I'm sure you've like experienced this, that it's just one little tweak that makes all sorts of things unfold. So we did $50,000 within 3 months. I was so stoked. It was like a really, really cool thing. And now since then, we've made several other little tweaks into more like techie and kind of almost futuristic spaces like messenger bots and the world of AI. We started teaching AI in 2021. And so now we're really focused on like the business coaching side of things. And we do talk about content and how to add AI into your content without losing who you are as a human being, how to speak on stage, all that kind of stuff. But underneath it, it's really helping people to figure out who they are and how they can share that with the world so they can make a bigger impact.
That's so awesome. And I love how you've come from one specific industry and used all those life skills to bring it to the business world and help other people now so they can thrive.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. So, Molly, please tell us what makes the best speakers, in your opinion?
Okay, I honestly, and I mean, I would love to know what you think about this also, because I think it's the people that we connect with the most, that people, the speakers that make us feel something. It's not always the speaker who's like super well put together. And I had this thought the other day. I didn't post this on social media, but I was thinking of posting this. Like, would you rather listen to someone speak who gives you all of the information that you need and like loads of like deep learning, or would you rather listen to someone who makes you feel something and where you're entertained but you're also learning, right? And for me, I find the people that resonate with me the most, that stick with me the longest, are those people that are telling stories, that are really showing up authentically and allowing us to connect.
Absolutely. Connection is key. And actually it's interesting because I've done a few keynotes in my lifetime. And
Yeah.
one of the things I love doing on stage is actually making eye contact with people in the audience.
Yeah.
And when I nod and I'm making eye contact with them in the audience, they're nodding and making eye contact in the audience. It's
Yeah.
one of the things I've learned over the years, and it makes it more fun. And I know that people pay more attention. What are some tips like that you teach people from your experience on stage?
Yeah, well, that actually reminds me of one of the tips that we give, which is called having a Mr. Rogers style conversation. So, a Mr. Rogers style conversation is pulled from something that I heard he say. I can't even speak right now, you guys. This is like a perfect example of authenticity. I made like one non grammatically correct sentence and then it just like tripled as I went down. It's perfect. But when you admit the fact that you're messing things up and then you just roll with it, that also helps as a speaker.
Yes.
So I was watching the documentary about Mr. Rogers and someone asked him, what is it that allowed your show to do so well and reach so many people? And he said the key was that he spoke to one person. And so I love this in our videos, instead of saying, hey, everybody, or hey, you guys, but to say, hey, you, right? Like he did, hey, neighbor, and you connecting with those individual people in the audience. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it helps you to be able to actually connect more as a whole when you pick out that one person that you connect with. And so I love when I walk on stage. I learned this from my friend Dana Corey years and years ago, that I stand on stage and I don't say anything. I just look into the community and I connect. It's really awkward, but it's so helpful to like really make sure. I am not speaking English at all today, but that is great.
to really make sure it's all good.
To really make sure that you're in the room and you've grounded yourself there, especially for people like me who are very high energy. Sometimes if we bring our highest energy, then we kind of ride above the community, above the audience, and we want to make sure that we're in the room.
Yes, that's a really valid point too. Like you, I also have a lot of energy, and anyone who's met me knows that I can energize or bunny and have to sometimes tone it down. But that's a really good point to say, meet people where they're at, right? So not only making that connection of saying, hey, neighbor, nice to see you, and you're now talking to me. Oh, yay, you're talking to me. Makes me happy. I'm paying attention, but also making sure that your energy level and your pace matches kind of where everybody else is at too. Thanks to CJ for sponsoring this episode of the For Female Founders podcast series and for supporting our mission to help, mentor, and elevate women in business.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that, I love when you said like that sometimes you feel you need to tone it down. What if we could actually like tone it in, right? Mm-hmm. Like let's figure out what is that energy that's right there, because I've also had it happen where I've made eye contact with people. One time I was speaking at this event called Traffic and Conversion, and there was this very buff man sitting in the audience with his arms crossed. And I really let it get into my head that he was judging me and all these things that were coming up. We talked a little bit about imposter syndrome. It was all bubbling up within me. And if I had allowed myself to really connect to his energy, that would have totally screwed the whole thing up. So it's like, you got to be careful about protecting your energy too. But yeah, I have some other things that I really make sure I do every single time. I'd love to share.
Yes, please. Let's talk about some of those. Okay, let's walk through the process. Before we even jump into those, let's start how do you even prepare to get up on stage? So like, I know there's people who are listening right now who are dying to try and get into the speaker circuit. They want to find the courage to just speak in front of a small crowd or a boardroom of people, right? So let's talk about the process first before we talk about some tips. How do you just start?
Yeah, the very first most important thing, I actually learned this way back when I was getting my BFA in theater. It's from Konstantin Stanislavski, and he is like the acting theorist. And he had this big chart. It was on the wall in our classroom in college. And this chart is basically what it takes to be like Meryl Streep. Okay, it's like the chart. And there's all these things, but across the bottom, there's one big, huge section, and it says, work on one's self. That's the most important piece. So we have a process for doing this. We call it the quesadilla of awesome. Have I told you about this before?
No, you haven't. Please elaborate.
Okay. So this is where you're going to make a list of 20 things that make you a uniquely awesome human being. Because oftentimes when we think about stepping on a stage or we think about going to a really important meeting, we're outside of ourselves. We're thinking about like, how am I going to impress them? What fancy things am I going to say? But we have to actually start with who we are, especially in this world of AI. It's the only differentiator that we really, truly have. And if we don't know what that is, nothing else is going to work. So I have a little acronym that we use to create this quesadilla of awesome. And It's 5 letters. It's actually the word save. And most people think that save is spelled with 4 letters, but I can't spell. So I spell my acronyms wrong so that people get over it, which is like really helpful. Okay. So it's the S is your skill sets. These are the things that you're naturally gifted at. So if the bill comes at a big dinner and everybody sends the bill to you to divide it up, it's like, that's your skill set, right? So like, what are your skill sets? The next is your appearance. And I'm sure you've experienced this, especially with doing all these interviews. It's not necessarily about what other people think about how you look. It's about what you think about how you look. Even if I can share a little secret, can I share a secret?
Yes, absolutely do.
Okay, so before we came on this video today, both of us shared with each other that we grabbed jackets to put on over what we were wearing right before we started, right? And that wasn't about what other people thought about how we look. It's about how we felt about how we looked in that moment, right? So find the things in your own appearance that you love that you can celebrate. One of my clients asked if my favorite color was big earrings because I love wearing giant earrings. So your appearance. The next is your activities. And this is separate from your business, separate from whatever you're focused on in the moment, like knitting, crocheting, hiking, skydiving. I don't know, your activities. It helps you to connect. It helps you to weave in story. It helps you to be more you. The V is for your values. And that's really the things that help to attract or detract, like polarize people so they go away. The clearer you are about your values up front, the more you'll attract the people you really want to be spending time with, the stages you really want to be speaking on. And then the final thing, this is a really silly one, but the final thing is things you like to eat. And so if you can find food that is polarizing, like my favorite example, I love Brussels sprouts. Do you like Brussels sprouts?
I love Brussels sprouts, especially with bacon.
Exactly. Shoot.
Anyone, while she's looking for her big earring, yeah. No, I'm just kidding. While she's looking for something, yes, if you ever haven't tried this, sauteed Brussels sprouts with Canadian bacon and some onions is amazing.
It's amazing.
Little bit of maple syrup on there, you're all good.
Oh yeah, see the maple syrup. I love like figs and grapes in my Brussels sprouts also. Like, oh, so good. So Brussels sprouts are a really great post. If you write on social media, Brussels sprouts, yes or no, your algorithm will like blow up. It's wild. Don't add a picture, just literally the words Brussels sprouts, yes or no. Well, I talk about this Brussels sprout idea so much that I can't find it right now, but I have a dish towel. 4 people have sent me the same dish towel that says, every day I'm Brustlin'. And now, like the quesadilla of awesome, the Brussels sprouts, I have all these weird food things that we talk about, but it makes it sticky so that when people see a quesadilla, they think of me. When people see Brussels sprouts, they think of me. And I then am feeling more confident, more alive because I'm bringing more of who I am as I move forward with this speaking adventure.
I love it. Okay, so save 2 A's spelled correctly in our minds, right? So we've got skill set, focus on your skill set. What can you bring to the table? No pun intended while we talk about food. Appearance, it's more important that you feel like you look great than what you think other people think of you. Activities, basically, who are you outside of work? And like, what cool stuff do you do? Your values, and do those align with the people in the audience? And what do you like to eat? Because everybody has a favorite food. People love talking about food.
Totally true. Totally true. It's like a really great common denominator that brings everyone again to the same table, right? It really evens things out. I love it. So once you have that list, before you start thinking about where you're going to speak, before you start thinking about your topics, before you start anything else, you're going to take your fingers, you make this list, you take your fingers. So do it with me. Take your fingers like this, and then you're going to tap them on your chest. Okay. So you're just going to tap your chest. And then, if you're listening to this and not watching, you're going to hear like, right? We're tapping our chest. And then you're going to roll your shoulders a little bit. Okay. And then you're going to hum. So you're going to go, And now you've got your own quesadilla of awesome, like, going through your whole body. And then you're going to say the money dance, because really this is the money dance. This is what I call the money dance. It's also actually a little bit of a vocal warm up, but it brings your amazing, awesome into your whole body so you can move forward with more confidence.
I would also say that it's really impossible to do that and not smile. Smiling is half the battle when you're up on stage and people. It immediately elevates your energy. It immediately makes you connect better. So that's an exercise to do too.
Totally good.
Then,
Yeah. So that's really the first step we do for everything. But it started as a performer back when I was auditioning. It really helped me. And now with whether I'm writing, I'm speaking, we always start with the quesadilla of awesome.
So great. I love it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So now people have gone through this process. Now what do? Let's say they're going into a boardroom. Okay. They've done their quesadilla of awesome. They know how to save themselves. They're now super hungry. And as soon as they're finished their presentation, they're going to go eat something, probably some Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?
Okay. There's two other things that we would do before we actually step into the boardroom. So the first is, and this is really maybe weird and you wouldn't think about this in terms of a meeting like this, but do a vocal warm up. It's exactly what I should have done before I came on with you today. And then I wouldn't be tripping on my words. A vocal warm up. And it seems silly, but literally like treat yourself like you are a singer, like you're going to be using this giant muscle, which is your tongue while you're speaking. So stretching your face out really big, like do it with me. Squish it really small and squish it to the right and squish it to the left. And then puff your cheeks out really big like this. Right? Sometimes I get like tension in my jaw. I'll do a little lip roll, like a try it.
Oh my gosh, that's harder than it looks.
Okay. And if you can't lip roll, you can do your R's also. I actually did this a lot this morning. I don't know why. I knew today was going to be a really big day of calls. So way at like 6 a.m., I was like in the kitchen. Right? And what you want to do is a siren like that takes you way up into your upper register and then all the way down low, because you're opening up what I call your vocal coloring box. So this vocal coloring box really gives you nuance to your voice so that you're not like just talking very monotone, or you're not only speaking with vocal fry, like way down here, right? You're like opening up this coloring box.
Range is awesome. So important, being able to use tonality to connect with people too and keep people engaged by going up and down and emphasizing and projecting in certain areas and then getting quiet in some areas. Makes it more and so then, engaging.
Okay. And that actually brings me to the next thing I was going to share, which is we have these 5 P's of the prepared performer. And if you can practice with these, then they start to become natural and you can start to weave them into what you're doing. So again, this isn't about performing or putting on like a show. It's about accessing the different pieces of how you communicate. So they're in no particular order, but let's just go with pitch, like we just talked about. So sometimes you may say things in a way that's a little higher, right? It's a little more excited. It's like, whoa. Sometimes you may say, whoa, right? So the pitch is really low. So your pitch, your percussiveness, and that's how hard or soft you hit your consonants. One really good tip I learned years ago is that if we use a hard k sound, so like content or clients or creative, that helps to grab attention, even if it's written. So when you have that hard C, people hear that k, right? That very percussiveness. But if you're too percussive, then sometimes you can sound like pretentious. So depending on who you're speaking to, you may want to mumble a little bit so you fit in.
Fair enough.
If you're speaking to a bunch of like high school kids, you don't want to come across like Marion the librarian from the Music Man, right? You want to be like a little more relaxed and not quite as overpronounced. So pitch, percussiveness, pace, like you mentioned earlier. So how fast or how slow you're speaking. Pauses are really good. And especially like we talked about earlier, if you're very easily excitable, sometimes you just never pause and then no one can ever process what you're saying.
That could be the 5th P then. Process.
Okay, are you?
Let people.
I know, process, right? I thought about it when I said it. I know. And actually, there is a 6th one. And when I was saying this, I couldn't remember what it was, but I recently changed it to 6. So the 5th one is your power. And so that's how loud or how soft you're speaking. And sometimes we think we need to just get louder, but this is a good metaphor for everything in life, that sometimes we need to speak quiet enough for people to actually be able to hear us.
And to pay attention. Because if you're yelling, people kind of don't want to hear. But if you're speaking quietly, suddenly everyone's trying to tune in.
Yeah, I love it. There's another P also.
Power could also be projection.
Oh, project. Yeah. Because it's a big thing between like, are you going to really put it out there? Or are you going to pull it back? And those are both P's as well. Look at us. Okay. And then the 6th one actually is the pattern interrupt. So the pattern interrupt is so powerful. So sometimes when I'm speaking, I'll just like, and just like make weird noises, but only this has to feel natural. It can't be something that you're being like inauthentically forcing stuff like this. But if you can, like, even in your slides, if you're using slides for your presentation, which you don't always need to use, but plan something that's like kind of out of left field, it really wakes people up and makes those sticky moments again.
Are you thinking like a slide where there might be a joke or some kind of a meme or something that they can resonate with, or just like a giant bowl of Brussels sprouts with bacon and maple syrup on top and be like, Brussels sprouts, yes or no? Are you
exactly. Exactly. So when I talk about this, I actually have a slide with a GIF that has Po from Kung Fu Panda.
Love
and do you know that movie? Okay,
very
Kung Fu
much
Panda
so.
3. I love those movies so much. Kung Fu Panda 3 is one of my favorite movies. And when he's trying to teach the other pandas to be ninjas, do you remember what happens?
I don't. Tell us.
So Po is really trying hard to get the pandas to be ninjas, but all they want to do is play. And one of them starts rolling down the hill, just like loving his life and having a good time. And at the bottom of the hill, he knocks out all the other animals. And there's this moment where the camera, you know, it's a cartoon, but the camera pans in on his face and he's like, oh, I don't need to teach you to be more like me. I need to teach you to be more like you. Right. And so I have this GIF of Po like
this awakening.
Totally. Uguay's like, yes, my child. So yeah, another great example is
a banana phone.
And this happened by accident in a video where someone was talking about bananas with this tip that they had. And I was like, well, that's so good. I'm going to call it in on my banana phone. And I just randomly had this sitting on my desk. There were 9 of us on camera. No one knew I was going to pick this up. It was just it was like super random, but everybody freaked out about it and was laughing in the chat. And now I give all of my clients a golden banana when they start working with us, because this is how you call in your future gratitudes.
Oh, I love that very much. And you might add in a 7th P, which is a prop.
Oh, look at that. Wow. I like it. I like
it. We must be creative entrepreneurs. I don't know. We're good on it.
Amazing.
Improv. So, yes. So good. Okay, so we have a bunch of, I like how our 4 Ps turned into 7 Ps, plus a few extra fun things. All great tips and things like that. Thank you. So then let's go to, so now you've done the presentation, you know,
yep.
And I would actually add an 8th P, which is practice.
Oh, yes.
Because you don't want to show up on stage and have not practiced your slides, not practiced your pauses, not practiced your pitch.
Yeah.
And
do it in practice in front of people, like really treat it like a performance. So sometimes when I am getting ready to do a new presentation, or using all of the P's, but when I'm getting ready to do a new presentation, I will practice inside my client Facebook group, because I have the chance for someone to pop on and see the fact that I'm doing it, because there's an extra layer of nervousness, of energy that comes over you when you know someone else is going to be there. So you know, if you have kids, get your kids to watch you, whatever, but even just recording yourself doing it so you can go back and watch it later. You can put it into ChatGPT, have ChatGPT analyze it for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's a really good point.
Or you can even practice in front of the mirror, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to see what you look like, and maybe you don't have a camera, or you're in the, let's say you need a minute to just double check how you're projecting something, go to the bathroom before you get on stage and just like look at how you're actually presenting that and the look on your face, right?
I love it.
And I think even just like having a certain, like, what do you suggest to people when they walk into a room? Is it professional? Is it smiling? Is it more fun? I mean, maybe it's dependent on the situation. What do you recommend?
Yeah. Well, one really great tip that I learned from that same Dana Corey, who was my very, very, very first business coach, and now she's a really good friend of mine, is that in addition to, once you're ready to start, like pausing and just kind of smiling and looking at everyone, which again feels so awkward, but it's really powerful. If there is someone there who is introducing you or welcoming you into the room, to do some sort of transfer of energy from them to you. So it doesn't have to be a hug if you're not comfortable with that. It could be a really great handshake or a fist bump. In 2020, I was lucky enough to speak at this big, huge event where they brought 10 speakers in to do that Zoom, like the wall of Zoom faces, you know?
Nice.
And at that point, most people were not really touching strangers, but a good friend of mine was introducing me, and I'm so used to like hugging people that I know that I walked out and I like both arms up, and then I was like, and I didn't know what to do. So I just like turned and gave him a booty bump on stage. It was so awkward and so funny.
That's awesome.
but yeah, having a really allow you to have that transfer of energy. And then something else that I've done for years that is so helpful is to find really like a unique way to start the conversation. So if this is like a keynote, you can do what I'm about to say. If it's a presentation that you're doing to a smaller group of people, it may be like ask a question or tell a little bit of a joke, something that kind of breaks the ice and builds that rapport. Mm-hmm. What I have done for years and years and years is I actually sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow almost every time I speak.
Wow. Well, clearly you can hit the notes. So
and I don't sing the whole thing. I just sing the very beginning of it. And then I allow it to tie into the first message that I'm going to be delivering. And sometimes I think like, oh, I should change the song or I should do, mix it up a little bit. But I continue to get such great feedback about it that it's something that's completely unique. And it really is who I am as a human. And it's something that I love. Mm-hmm. And it slows my breathing down because usually when I start, my energy is so high that I would jump into this really crazy pace. So it's like a great gift for myself.
I think that's awesome. I'll also say I have never met a person who does not like that song and that does not know the words to that song. So immediately you've captured the entire audience's attention.
Totally. And you can do that without a song by talking about like a nostalgic, anyone here ever have a VCR, and even if it has nothing to do with what you're talking about, bringing that nostalgia into the conversation is so powerful.
That's so awesome. And you mentioned something about being able to sort of regulate your breathing. What kind of breathing techniques do you use? I have a few tricks up my sleeve for myself to regulate my nervousness before I go up on stage. But what do you use for breathing?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So like the vocal warm-up stuff that I talked about, that can be really helpful. Also, there's a couple of weird things, right? So humming can actually be really good too, because it brings your head to your heart. So when I talked about this earlier, that it slows things down and it really brings the vibration of our own voice into our body. It's really good to do like big, deeper belly breaths. Like, in choir in high school, I always thought our diaphragm went like in and out because they talked about breathing from your diaphragm. Your diaphragm actually goes down, right? But when it goes down, if you allow yourself to think of like an inner tube around your whole entire body and you expand your breath through your back, through the sides of your stomach, all of that can be really helpful. And then when you breathe out, to breathe out on a shh, or like you're breathing through a straw, like where you make the air hole smaller.
Yes.
Right. It really does physically slow it down. Another one, I forget what it's called. What's it called where you cover one nostril and then the other nostril? You know what I'm talking about?
I do. It's actually a form of meditation and chi, if that's right.
I did it. I just got back from Hawaii and they were calling it rainbow breathing. I know I've heard it. It's called something else, but it looks maybe a little funny if you're like standing on stage covering your nostrils, but before you walk into the room or before you leave your hotel room, if you're traveling, that can be really helpful. What are yours?
Before I go up on stage, I use two forms of breathing technique. One is box breathing. Have you ever
which is awesome.
So 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4, right? So you do that 10 times in a row. It totally regulates. Everything comes down.
I love it.
The other thing I've done, and this is actually, I learned this when I used to have panic attacks. Somebody taught me this and it made me stop having them. And I still use it before I go up on stage, which is inhaling for 4 seconds and then exhaling for 6. And then inhaling for 4 and exhaling for 6. So there's something about exhaling for a longer period of time than it is inhaling that actually just brings your entire nervous system down, and it helps you actually hold your breath for longer so you don't sound like you're running out of breath on stage.
That's such a good one. There was a time when I was accidentally over oxygenating. Like I was doing so many calls and I was talking so much and I was really going like in between, and then you don't let the air out and you get yourself into trouble. So that's a really, really good one. I love it.
That's my best one. Yeah. That's the one that I use the most is breathe in 4, breathe out 6, and do that like 7 to 10 times in a row. It's great. So now, we're at the end of our presentation, and when you do this, so you're saying goodbye or you're trying to wrap. Okay. What tips do you have to like make a bang at the end so people stand up and give you a standing ovation or remember you or run to the front of the stage to get your phone number and want to contact you and work with you?
Amazing. Okay. And there's all kinds of stuff to do in the middle, right? But we obviously don't have time to do that. So at the end, what I love to do is I love to present the gap. So I love to present like you've learned all this stuff, but now what? So before we get to that place, we want to give them a clear, like we want them to feel that they are like cozy, right? So we want to give them like a clear action plan. So we've a little recap basically. So we've covered this, this, and this, and this. Here's your little action plan. So write this down, right? I'll say, write this down. And then I'll give like the final, like a reminder of the main points that we covered. Mm-hmm. And then I love to either reiterate or like instill a new belief that leaves them like, oh my gosh, this is actually what I'm going to go do. This is the biggest nugget of all, right? So when I speak, I bookend it with however I started. So oftentimes when I speak about the fact that whatever we're doing, it's really about that big dream, right? It's about like, what is that thing we're creating? And whether I'm talking about spreadsheets or I'm talking about AI or chatbots or networking, all of it really is about that dream. So for me, I often bring that dream back and I incorporate something that's like a physical moment where I have them put their hand over their heart and say the word dream, right? And then I'll ask a question that leaves them like, oh yeah, right? And depending on what type of a talk you're doing, sometimes you can give an actual call to action. Sometimes like to a opt-in or something like that. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'll be in the back of the room if you have any questions. Or sometimes what I do most often is I actually have people message me on Instagram.
Perfect.
So Instagram up until recently has not really been my most favorite platform, to be totally honest. I've like allowed myself to realize that I love it. And I've shifted that in the past couple of months, which I'm very proud of. But I have used it for years as a landing page. So it doesn't feel like, oh, go to molly.live and send me whatever. I say, go to my Instagram, The Prepared Performer, and DM me the word prompts, for example. Or if I'm at like, we're not at NAMM, but it would still work. When I spoke at the National Association for Music Merchants, huge room, I said, go to my Instagram and DM me the word NAMM, and then an automated messenger chat starts. And that way I can have them go to my website through that chat, but also I'm starting real conversations with real human beings, which is my actual goal with all of this. So
I love it so much. And honestly, I could talk to you for probably 4 hours straight. It's so much fun chatting with you. You have so many fun tips and tricks. I love your energy so much. Sadly, we are out of time today. So we're going to have to do this again. Like I'd actually love to have you on the show again. There's a bunch of questions. I know we wanted to talk about how to overcome imposter syndrome because there's a lot of people out there who struggle with that. So we'll definitely have to do this again. But in the meantime, Molly, what is the best way to contact you? And do you have one final thought and word of advice for people who are trying to get themselves up on stage or present or do a better job of getting buy-in from team or people out in an audience?
Yeah. So I am Molly Mahoney. The best way to contact me actually is I'm kind of on LinkedIn, as I know you are so awesome on LinkedIn. So you can send me a message there. I'm really active on my personal Facebook profile. Send me a message there. Or like I mentioned, if you go to The Prepared Performer, which is my Instagram, we have all kinds of goodness there too. The final tip that I would give is actually really, this is going to sound silly, but to the depth of your soul, I want you to understand that you're weird. The things that make you weird, that is your superpower. As we are moving forward with all of this craziness that's happening in the world with AI and all of this, that human connection piece, the community piece is really the most important thing. And if you don't figure out and learn to celebrate the fact that the things that make you weird are actually the things that will give you the most amazing amount of success, if you don't figure that out, it's going to be a rough couple of years. So know that your weird is wonderful. And I can't wait to learn what it is that makes you weird.
Thank you, Molly. We love having you on the show. Thank you for all your insights and advice, and looking forward to having you again. We'll catch you guys soon. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening to the For Female Founders podcast series. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe, like, or comment below so we can continue to support women in business by helping them thrive, not just survive. We'll see you on the next show.